Good morning. As you can tell, here in the Canadian Rockies, it's winter. It is very much so winter. We've had a really cold snap recently and plenty of snow. And it's a really tough time of year to shoot. Like, don't get me wrong, on one hand here in the Canadian Rockies, when it does snow, it becomes very festive. It can be really pretty. But then also, it can make photography much more challenging. And one of the things with that is, if it snows too much, you just get this kind of white blanket over everything, right? All of those kind of iconic lakes that you're used to seeing, those kind of turquoise blues, they just don't exist anymore, right? So if you're going to Bow Lake, Peyto Lake, Lake Louise, you're just getting a complete bed of white, of flat white, no features, no anything. So it can be really difficult to find compositions and to find places to shoot that still work really well in the winter. So not only is the photography tough, the motivation is also really difficult. Like on a morning like this morning, it was about -18 when I headed out and I got in my car this morning. So yeah, pretty hard to get out of bed this morning. So this morning, I'm actually revisiting a composition that I shot last time, I think in the fall, maybe when there was a little bit of snow, but now there's obviously a lot more. And I've partly chosen to come here today because we have this little building here in this shot, and then the Three Sisters in the background. I was hoping there would be more light on in that building, to be honest with you. But I think on a day like today, where it's pretty kind of just overcast and just kind of white, I need things that are going to stand out a little bit and add a bit of contrast to the scene. So having a building like this with a little light on, a little bit of colour will help, I think, with that. So yeah, we're going to start off the morning here shooting that little house with the Three Sisters behind. There's a tiny little bit of colour coming into the clouds, but I'm not honestly expecting a lot. But we'll start off the morning here shooting that, I think, and then have a little adventure and see if we can just make the most of the conditions today. So this is the little composition that I'm eyeing up first thing this morning. You can see here we've got the Three Sisters, and then we've got that little house. Again, there's a little light on inside that, but it's a real shame there's not more lights on inside that building, to be honest with you. But with this fresh snow over everything, it does look really, really nice. It would have just been fantastic if there was a little bit of colour in the background there as well. But I think it might turn out all right anyway. Just kind of trying to mainly focus on the building down there. So F11, 0.3 seconds, keeping the ISO at 100. Might not be a bad little shot to start off this morning. In these sort of conditions, it really is all about looking for that pop of colour against that flat grey background. Right, I think because there's so much fresh snow on the trees, you can see over here, I think actually there might be another shot just down here that works really well. But first I want to show you this. I want to show you the little thing that I've invested in to film with my Osmo on. It's like a little monopody type thing, but I'll show you on this camera because it's actually making filming today really easy. So I don't know if you can kind of see this. Like you see here, it's got like little tripod legs down the bottom there, and then it's fully extendable up to the Osmo. And the cool thing about this is, I don't know if you can see here, that like to adjust it, I just push the thing down or put it back up. Probably need two hands to put it back up, to be honest with you. But yeah, super cool. It can rearrange it really, really quick. Yeah, pretty happy with that little thing, to be honest with you. Pull it up, pull it down. It's making getting different angles and different shots super easy using the Osmo here. So I think with this shot here, you can see that's the little house that I'm aiming to shoot and all the trees behind it. And I think with this one, I want to zoom in relatively tight, but I also want to get relatively low because you can kind of see like this is almost like it's Cougar Creek, but it's kind of a drainage ditch, I suppose. And you might be able to see all the kind of rocks and the I don't know, some kind of drainage system on the side there. I kind of want to get rid of that. So I think what I'm going to try and do is go super low with the tripod and maybe even use a little bit of the snow as kind of like a little foreground blur, I suppose, and then get the house in the background and those trees behind. And I think that might be a nice little wintry festive shot. Again, there seems to be almost no lights on inside that house, which is kind of weird. There's sort of like a steam or smoke coming out of the chimney, but I don't know, whoever lives in there obviously just spends all their time in the dark apparently. So I kind of like this little composition. I've set it up so I've got the little gate of the house on the left hand side. I've gone low enough to kind of cut out any of that drainage ditch. And then on the right hand side as well, I've got kind of a larger tree sort of framing it that way as well. And then those nice trees kind of just run from the bottom right up into the top left of the scene. So it's not a bad image for especially such a grey kind of day, a grey overcast day, a little bit socked in. But I suppose that's the thing with photography, right? Is for me, it's a lot of motivation. Like the only reason I'm out here this early in the morning in what was -18 when I left the house is because I wanted to take some pictures. And it is fantastic for that. Like this time of year is pretty great. It's pretty sad. Like out here in the mountains, there's not necessarily a lot of sun. So to get the motivation to come outside for just for like a walk or for, you know, just spending time outdoors can be pretty difficult. But having the camera and having photography definitely gives you that little bit of purpose.
I just love how the red of the roof and the orange of those beams contrast with the colder tones behind.
So moving on, I think that's kind of it for that little location today. If you are interested, this exact spot is in my Canmore photography location guide. There are links in the description below to those guides if you fancy coming out here and shooting. But let's move on. Let's see if we can find anything else. I'm hoping I might be able to find some bighorn sheep. I've recently invested in a big wildlife lens, like a 150 to 600. Not necessarily the world's best wildlife lens, but the longest focal length I've ever used. So hoping that we might be able to use that a little bit today as well and make the most of this kind of grey day. I suppose one of the advantages of a day like today as well is that the conditions don't really change, right? I'm not kind of chasing light or waiting for the sun to come up. It's going to stay pretty consistent throughout the day, I think, a little bit flat, but we'll see what we can do with these conditions and see if we can make the most of this morning.
So then I drove up a slippery road I probably had no real business being on in my old Matrix, and proceeded to get stuck about 3 different times, whilst seeing exactly 0 bighorn sheep. I did, however, spot a few elk elsewhere, but they weren't really cooperating for any pictures, so decided to move on to safer pastures.
Yeah, so going on the hunt for bighorn sheep was definitely a little bit of a disaster, but I've stopped off on one of the pedestrian bridges here in Canmore on the way back because the rivers here are still open. This is the Bow River, and it does tend to stay open through the majority of winter actually, which is kind of giving me a little bit of contrast and a little bit of a reflection, a little bit of contrast against the very white grey scene. So I think the shot's kind of working, just going for reflection, trees on either side. You can see here we've got the sun kind of coming in on the top left, so I'll probably have to work with that a little bit in the edit, see how that turns out. But yeah, maybe another little shot that might turn out okay. I decided to come down here where the roads are in much better shape. I'm down here at Minnewanka, and it's about 11 o'clock now, and you can see the sun has definitely come up. The cloud has cleared a little bit, but the light is still relatively soft because there's a bit of kind of light cloud in the sky, and just during winter the kind of light does stay a little bit softer, I think, throughout the day. And partly the reason I've come here is because we've got this little docks floating on the lake, and also I knew that Lake Minnewanka wasn't frozen, which is quite rare for this late into winter. It has been pretty cold recently, but not cold enough for long enough to freeze this lake over. So we've got a little bit more going on here. And these docks that are floating in the middle of the lake here offer a great bit of contrast. So even if the light is really, really flat, you can still use these to add a bit of interest and a bit of colour contrast to your image. But you might better see behind me here, we've got a fair few things going on. I've got some really nice kind of ice formations on the very start of the lake here. And then we've got these nice kind of soft snow pillows along the edge of the lake as well. This is kind of like a pile of rocks used for part of the dam, I believe. And obviously we have the mountains in the background and the docks in the midground. So I'm composing a little shot here using all of those elements and those guys in the middle. And I think that little bit of mist in the background as well, it will turn out to be a pretty nice shot, even though it is a little bit later in the day. So as you very well might be able to tell, it has continued to be a pretty grey and a pretty overcast day here in the Rockies. However, I do think I got a couple of images that will have turned out okay. And even though the winter is one of the hardest times to shoot here in the Rockies, you still can get some great images. So it just goes to show getting out of bed and giving it a go is always worth it. If you are heading to the Rockies on a photography trip, be sure to check out my location guides in the link in the description below. There are loads of locations and loads of inspiration for any time of year in those guides, and it helps support this channel. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you on the next video when we have slightly better weather.